On Monday, my friends Scott and Wayne joined me in a conversation about our memories of the Immaculate Reception. The plan was and is to release the conversation today on the 50th anniversary of that legendary play. Well, on Wednesday, we got word of the passing of the great Franco Harris, the man who scored the touchdown. For 5 straight years, the Raiders and Steelers met in the postseason, having epic battles. The Steelers won 3 of those games. Raiders won 2. And although Franco's Steelers broke our hearts more times than not, I have fond memories of those battles. In fact, I believe 2 of the first 2 people that greeted Franco when he got to heaven were Coach Madden and Jack Tatum. Franco, rest in peace. Greetings. If you lived in Oakland, Alameda, or anywhere in the East Bay during the late 1960s or the 1970s, there were 3 certainties: death, taxes, and playoff games with the Oakland Raiders. In fact, another certainty was chances are things were going to get weird in those playoff games. It never got more weird than December 23rd, 1972, 50 years ago today, when the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Oakland Raiders 13-7 on a play, an infamous play that has been known for the last 50 years as the Immaculate Reception. Today, I'm talking with my lifelong friends, Scott Happ and Wayne Turner. And while we may look old now, on that day, on that day in 1972, speak for yourself, yeah. Well, we may look old now, but on that day in 1972, we were 15-year-old sophomores at Alameda High. Scott, Wayne, good to see you today.
You guys as well. Scott, it's been a long time. Good to see you, buddy.
Way too long, Wayne. Way too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know we're ripping the Band-Aid off, ripping the scab off, but we've got to talk about this 50 years later because it's still an issue. But before we get started on that play, on that game, I want to just build this up a little bit. And Scott, you're the oldest of the 3 of us, and you're the most handsome, so I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
What do the Raiders mean to you, and what did they mean to Alameda, which is a city right next to Oakland, during the late 60s and early 70s?
Oh, they were the team. They were the team. You know, you started with the Mad Bomber, going all the way back up to Kenny S., Kenny Stabler, the Snake, and they were great fun. They seemed loose. They won a lot, but they lost, as you said, very strangely in quite a few games. Some of my best memories were going to Chiefs Raiders game where the final score might be 6-3 because of all the hard hitting and just all the little intricacies of football. It was a man's game back then.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. What about you, Wayne?
Boy, I think we've talked about this before, Steve. I was really grew up in the Bay Area, but I was never a Raiders fan till probably the '69 season. I rooted against the Raiders in Super Bowl II.
Ooh.
Mother didn't talk to me for a month. True story. But moving to Alameda in '67, being at the Boys Club all the time, every year they would do their awards dinners, and they'd always have a Raider come in and play the highlight film. So after a couple of years, I got to meet a few of the guys, became a big Raider fan, and talk about their playoffs and how they always lost or won later. Interestingly, you talk about the '69 AFC Championship game that the Jets should have never been in if Darryl LaMonica throws a ball forward instead of throwing a backwards lateral.
Right.
So that started the whole thing. And then over the years, it's kind of funny how things flip back the other way. They were on the high side of all the craziness. But it took, I think, that game in 72 to lose the way they did, that hopefully exercised a lot of that, at least for a while.
Right, right. So we talked about everything since we've known each other, but I didn't know you rooted against the Raiders.
Well, I was a big Packer fan.
Why was that?
I was a huge Packer fan. I never understood. The best explanation I could ever come up with was when I was a kid. Every Sunday morning, 8:30, Lindsey Nelson and Paul Hornung, Notre Dame highlights.
Oh man,
yeah, I mean, 4, 5, 6 years old, that was the only thing in town. It was either all these religious services or Notre Dame football. What else you gonna watch? So I watched all that. My mom said every Sunday morning during football season, 8:30. I wouldn't watch the games afterwards. I'd just watch Notre Dame highlights to hear Lindsey Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the alliance with Paul Hornung, I assume that's why I like the Packers. But yeah, I was a big Packer fan back in the day.
Right, right. Now maybe I didn't know because we were at different schools. You went to different middle school. You went to Porter School.
Well, then elementary school, yeah.
Right, right. And then Scott and I, we both went to Lincoln School for middle school. What are your memories of that Packer Super Bowl II, Scott?
Not much.
Okay.
Probably because back then we didn't really have a lot of TV in our house, and what we had was, controlled by mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad would watch football, but he preferred to go to the games. So I have what I remember is we were up in the mountains that weekend at our family cabin outside of Arnold. And there was no television up there. And the radio was not that good. So it was probably one of the very few Super Bowls that I did not get to see or listen to. And I was very depressed about that.
Yeah. Well, they got knocked around by the Packers, and the Packers beat them up pretty good. But it was this feeling around here was, they got beat, but they're the up and coming team. And heck, I thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl every year because
most of us did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was just awesome. And then it was the seasons were always great. There were, in order to get to the playoffs, they had to get past the Chiefs. Scott, you were talking about the Chiefs. It wasn't a guarantee they were going to get to the playoffs, but they usually did. And then they had LaMonica's backward pass. Wayne, you talked about that. Then the next year they lost to the Chiefs when LaMonica got hurt. LaMonica was a great quarterback. Then they lost another time. And then this 1972 comes up, and I don't know about you guys, but that was the first time I ever heard about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were a horrible team before 72. Scott, what was your impression of the Steelers?
You're absolutely right. They were not a good team. They had, that's how they got Terry Bradshaw.
Mm-hmm.
They just, they got a high draft pick and they were able to get him. But I think it had a lot to do with Chuck Noll. Chuck Noll put that team together, both offense and defense, and those players clicked. What was a devastating loss for us in the Immaculate Reception game was an outstanding win for a lot of my friends here. There's quite a few Pittsburgh Steelers fans living back here in Savannah. And I refuse to ride in their golf cart since they all have Steeler logos on the back of their seats.
I can't blame you, Scott. I wouldn't do it either.
Yeah.
That was their first playoff win ever, franchise history.
And exactly. Yeah. And it's what got them going and forward. And, I was reading today a lot about the Immaculate Reception. It came actually from a pastor of the local church that was right there next to the stadium. And he would get on Sunday mornings, all these guys showing up in uniform tops, coming in for service, and then heading out to the parking lot to tailgate before the game. But, where it was so bad for us because it's still an illegal play, and I'm never going to not say that. For that city and that team, it provided a lot of hope because they were going through the closing of the steel mills, families, moving apart, youngsters not staying in the local city, having to go outside to find a job. So, in that way, and it took me probably about 40 years to understand that from a very good friend of mine who grew up there. But no, it still burns my craw. And anytime anybody ever talks about it, I said, "Oh, you mean the illegal play that never would have made it through now?" But we had grainy football, grainy TVs, not a very good picture. But when I first saw it, I said, "Oh no, that was an offensive player to hit that." And that's all I'll say.
All right. So I was going to ask you, so it was illegal because at that time, two offensive players couldn't hit the ball back to back or something, or
exactly. Yeah, it was.
That's exactly it. It has to go
that's
through
exactly
offense,
the play.
defense, offense.
right.
Yeah. And so it had to hit. If it hit one offensive player, no other offensive player could touch it.
Yeah. I think the reason for that was they changed that rule. But I think the reason for that rule was they didn't want guys like playing volleyball.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
something like that. And
Well,
did you guys see that play yesterday in the San Diego game where somebody
No.
did that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, saying it was on the Titans. They did it in the end zone.
Right.
There
Some
was
guy, yeah.
Herbert threw a ball. It went over, and one of the Titan players was about ready to go out of bounds, kind of like on touchbacks on punts.
Right.
He went up in the air, tipped it back to his other player, and that guy caught it both feet in bounds.
Right.
Got
The first guy was going to catch it, but he was going to catch it out of bounds. It was a brilliant.
Right. So he flipped it. He flipped it over his head. Yeah.
Right. But they had that rule. You couldn't do that in 1972.
No. And if I remember correctly, a lot of that was because of Otis Taylor with the Chiefs, because he was 6'7". He was a really big guy.
Right.
Plus, they would put him underneath the goalpost to try to block a field goal back in the day when the goalpost was on the goal line.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of a way to keep him from doing that type of stuff because he was real famous for that.
Right. Right. So yeah, there was that rule, and and it was really great. Somebody's going to get mad at me for saying this, but I remember that week, and every night we had Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, and Channel 7.
Yep.
And every night at 6 o'clock, I would watch the news and I would watch the sports, and they would replay it, and they'd have the grainy video and they'd slow it down. And it reminded me of the Zapruder film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trying to freeze it.
So good. They can get mad at all three of us.
Haven't seen it since.
Yeah.
Well, hey, here's another one for you, Steve. All the UFO sightings, even of these days, why are they all fuzzy?
Yeah. It's just,
Absolutely.
I think we'd have better cameras now.
That's right. That's right. So, Wayne, what did you think about the legality of the play?
Oh, I'm like Scott. I can remember watching the game and stormed out of the house.
Yeah.
I was so angry. I was at my aunt's house in San Lorenzo. And I slammed the door, went outside. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Didn't want to see anybody. I was so mad because, like everybody else, there's no doubt in my mind, even today. Yeah, Tatum had all the momentum coming in, but the ball hit the wide receiver before it went to Franco. And like Scott, I watched the play this morning or today as well, and that end zone shot from the far end zone,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went through like we were just talking, and I tried to freeze it. And gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but for the first time in my life, I questioned that maybe it didn't hit the ground.
I don't think the ball hit the ground.
No, because you look at that shot, and it looks like it's about 2 or 3 inches up off. There's space between, because that's one thing I've always thought was, well, the ball hit the turf anyway, and Steve and I have talked. If you ever read Frenchie Fuqua is the most popular guy in Pittsburgh this time of the year, because everybody goes back to that. And he's always been famous saying, hey, I was the only guy. I had the best view in the house. I was standing right behind Franco. I saw the whole thing. I'm not saying word one out of respect for my man Franco until the day he dies. Well, sorry, Franco, you need to go, because Frenchie's got to talk, or Frenchie, you got to grow a pair, something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, gosh, dog, man.
Yeah, I never really questioned it hitting the ground, because I mean they had a lot of different things, and it looked like there was always there. You know, he caught it, but the legality of him catching the ball after hitting his, you know, the other teammate. I'm blanking on his name right now. Sorry.
I
it
can't
just,
remember who.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't.
Well, he threw the ball
guy.
to Fuqua.
What's that?
Was a Fuqua.
Yeah, he threw the ball to Fuqua, and then
Yeah.
Tatum hit Fuqua. There was a collision, and that's when the ball went
And
to.
Fuqua will never. He will never
That's
say.
why Fuqua won't say anything, because the ball touched him.
Yeah,
It hit him.
He won't say.
And that was, yeah.
So Fuqua's
I mean,
taking the fifth, so we're assuming he doesn't want to incriminate himself.
It's 50 years water under the bridge. You know, it still burns
No,
our
it's
crop.
not. No, it's not.
Well, it is in the sense that you can't change it, but
Yeah.
you can still be pissed. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Frenchie, see, he's not dumb though. The longer he keeps quiet about it, every year he becomes relevant again.
Yeah.
You know, so every year, hey, somebody go see if you can get it out of Frenchie. So it keeps him in the public eye. So it's not a stupid move on his part at all.
Well, I remember Tatum saying, I never touched it.
Yeah. Well, of course he's going to say that though. But I mean, it had to be the ball to move that fast. He had to hit it. Or
Tatum?
or he timed it just perfect, where he hit Fuqua at the moment that ball hit him. You know, and it careened off.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it hit Tatum at all. I think he hit Fuqua. That made him miss the ball, bounced off him, and
that ball had a lot of mustard on it.
You know, incomplete pass, and then all of a sudden, Franco comes out of nowhere and just grabs it.
Right. Well, whatever it was, you know what really frosted me about that play and that losing that game? We've lost some before. We've lost some since. I wanted Miami. That was Miami's undefeated season.
Yep.
And I had that on the calendar. And
if you remember, everybody in the Bay Area, they thought Pittsburgh, okay, these guys are young and there's no way. Bring on. Everybody wanted Miami. That's all everybody talked about.
And they went 17-0, but they didn't have to go through the Raiders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I didn't get the satisfaction. So I asked Scott what his impression was of the Steelers. Wayne, I'm going to ask you, what was your impression of Terry Bradshaw?
I didn't know a whole lot about Bradshaw before then. Of course, unfortunately, I learned a lot about him, and never from that moment forward, he was dead to me. I hated him. I flat out hated him and Franco Harris. When I was after we graduated, I played football at Laney our first year afterwards. We had a running back who wore 32 because of Franco Harris. And the SOB ran just like Franco, ran out of bounds. Yeah. Used to drive me nuts. We're out blocking our rear ends off for this guy, and he's running out of bounds. He was, man, I'm Franco Harris. I begged the coaches, let me play some defense. I wanted a piece of him so bad. J.J. Jennings, Johnson, I will never forget that name. Man, I hated that guy. I had to block for him every day, and all we ever heard, I'm Franco, man, shut up. Anybody but Franco Harris.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. It left a mark.
Oh.
How about you, Scott? What was your impression?
Terry Bradshaw, I mean, he was a good old country boy with a pretty decent arm. And
big arm.
And the thing is that the players around him, like Lynn Swan and Stallworth, grew up with him, or he grew up with them. And so he had some phenomenal playmakers. And plus the fact, all they had to do was score a couple times because they had that defense that just pretty much shut everybody down. Mm-hmm. And so it was can we, he was the guy we were always trying to get, knock him out of the game. They won't have a quarterback. Maybe we can then, score.
But Hanratty behind him wasn't.
Back.
Hanratty behind him wasn't chicken liver.
No, he wasn't. But he wasn't. He didn't have.
Oh no.
Hanratty was a good quarterback, but he didn't have the arm.
No, but he created a whole different set of problems.
Yeah.
But Hanratty was pretty good back for back in that day.
Yeah. That was kind of like an all-star team.
Right.
It really, if you start thinking about how many of those individuals are in the Hall of Fame.
Personally, I mean, the Raiders, if you look at that era, I mean, they didn't have one rivalry. They really had three. They had the Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that decade of the 70s, in my opinion, there's been nothing like it since.
Yeah.
There's not been
Jets
one
too.
team. What's that?
Those Raider Jet games with Namath were epic.
Yeah, but Namath wasn't. Namath didn't. He really didn't do a whole lot against the Raiders, though. Raiders kept him in check.
He had that 400 plus touchdown. I mean, 400-yard game at Monday Night Football. I was there.
Yeah. But other than that, though, you look
game.
at his stats. The stats weren't great. I mean, but then again, his whole career, his stats weren't great. So
we're digressing from the Immaculate Reception, but at
that time,
I don't put anything in the stats because these guys just competed, and it was Namath competed, Bradshaw competed, and the thing that struck me about Bradshaw was the beginning of that play was his scrambling ability, because he shouldn't have gotten the pass off.
Tony Klein went right by him and had the arm out. Tony Klein just overcommitted.
Mm-hmm.
Klein was looking him in the eyeballs. I'm getting you, Terry. Boop.
Yeah.
How did I miss you?
And Bradshaw had to get rid of the ball, and he saw Fuqua, but he was being harassed. It was like, that's what he was hard to get down, kind of like Elway. I'm not comparing them as quarterbacks, but he was hard to get down, and he pulled it off on that play. It was also, at least in my memory, it was the first time we saw Stabler really in action.
It was.
And it was
absolutely.
Yeah, and he scored. I guess I don't remember if LaMonica got hurt or
he did. LaMonica got hurt. They put Snake in because LaMonica was stinking it up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Madden pulled the plug, and that first series, Kenny goes, what was it, 47 yards down the sideline for a touchdown?
Yeah, he went down the sidelines.
Kenny Stabler? Or what?
Yeah.
The Snake.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I remember Cliff Branch just going out of his mind. If you watch that play, you'll see Branch just jumping up and down, celebrating the touchdown. And in my mind, I thought, well, I hope they didn't score too soon. But they were being shut out, and they took a 7-6 lead, and it didn't hold up. But it was an unbelievable game. So
and there wasn't a lot of scoring back then.
No.
We had a lot of low scoring games.
Right. It was defense.
Yeah, it was a defensive game. I mean, that was the thing. Plus, but you look at part of that was because the rules really played to help the defenses, where today everything's offense. I mean, that's just the way it was back then. Like you said, it was a game for men back then. You had to be a tough SOB to play the game back then.
You could watch all those plays, Stork jumping over the line, horse collaring someone and yanking them down.
Yeah.
Ben Davidson
that was football.
Greasy
That was
when he
football back then.
Oh yeah, Ben Davidson, that famous picture when he broke Greasy's nose, when he Greasy's head is right here. Come to daddy, little boy.
Yeah.
You could do anything you wanted to the quarterback, and you could do anything you wanted to the wide receiver. It just you could. It was a free for all. That's why the stats didn't matter. The quarterbacks were running for their lives.
I actually talked to Ben Davidson not long after that, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, how did that feel when you broke his nose?" Kind of twirled his mustache and with that deep, gravelly voice, "It felt good."
Yeah.
All he said.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
guys were great. They were a team of misfits that nobody else wanted. And Madden was able to bring them together, make them a cohesive group, and, focusing on just win, baby, win. And that was it.
And if you look, that's absolutely true. And for people that don't realize that, go read John Madden's books. Go read Snake's book. Because Scott, I don't know did you ever read Snake's book?
No, I haven't
Scott?
read that one. I got to go get that.
Oh, you got to read it, because he talks about so many things that happened that, he lived in Alameda. Stuff that happened. It's like, getting off course, but the one time he's talking about, with Matuzak, he said Madden called him into his office and he goes, "What's up, coach?" He goes, "Well, I got good news and bad news." So what's up? He said, "Well, we just signed John Matuzak." He said, "Oh, that's great. What's the bad news?" "He's living with you." And then a couple of weeks later, and I can remember this, we were at school, all of a sudden word was all over school, "Oh my God, Tooz is over at Razor's Edge. He's going to destroy the place." We all bolted down to get to the Razor's Edge. He went in and told Dick he wanted a mohawk. Dick's, "I can't do that. You'll kill me. Just do it." So he called Snake. "Hey, you better get over here and get your boy. He's going to destroy my place. I'm not giving him a mohawk." And he talked at length about that. It was a great story.
that would be fun. Yeah.
Stabler said one more thing in that story. He said, Kellogg said, "If I don't give him a mohawk, he's going to kill me. But if I give him a mohawk 2 weeks from now, he's going to kill me."
Exactly. Oh yeah, those two. I mean, I don't know if I've ever read a book and almost wet myself laughing so many times, because it was like stuff out of our childhood. "Oh, I remember this. I remember that." It was a great read.
Yeah, they're mentioning people we know.
Yeah. Well, it's like
people we
Mike
met.
Darby.
Yeah.
Mike Darby lived across the street from Art Tom's.
Well, no, didn't he live across the street from Matuzak, and Matuzak had that
Oh, it was Art Tom's.
limo?
No, it was Art Tom's, because
It was
him,
Art
Bill
Tom?
Piano, and one other guy got the limo.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a limo. It was like a
It was
limo.
a stretch limo.
Yeah, it was a stretch. It looked like it was from a funeral home or a mortuary.
Exactly, it was.
Yeah.
Tom's.
Yeah, it was
Tom's bought
it was a hearse. It was a hearse.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, there's a lot of other stories which are a little too blue for this, so we won't go into that. But yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple too. So that'll be another time.
That'll be the next one. The 50th anniversary of something else. So anyway.
Because Art Tom's, his son, I met him. His son ended up going and playing at Fresno State after I graduated there.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of cool. I said, "Yeah, I knew your father back in the day. He was kind of a crazy SOB."
Yeah. Unbelievable. So we've covered it, but I'm going to give you both your own last word. So Scott, what's your last word on this 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception? How are you going to put it to rest?
Well, I actually had it put to rest until you started telling me, "Hey, we're going to talk about the 50th reception, the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception," because I forgot it was 50 years. But no, it's I'm pretty much over it now. It's not a play that would work today. I think what it was is that, as you were saying, the Raiders won a lot of games. They were averaging 10 wins a season. They just were not getting over the hurdle. There was that one last hurdle, whether it was Miami, whether it was the Chiefs or the Steelers. And I was all set for them to move on to the next. I was already thinking Super Bowl, baby. And what it did for the Steelers was that it jump-started their dynasty. That was the most definite win, and this is from Steeler fans, unfortunately, in their entire history, that got them moving. And with that win, they feel that if they didn't have it, they probably would not have been successful going forward, because they probably would have made changes on the team.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You look at that. The Steelers have that win, like you said, that jump started that whole dynasty. The Raiders really never had that win, because the Raiders had a great run late 60s through the 70s, but there's not one win that you can really point to. The closest you have is that, what was that, a 4-week period back there where Blanda made a field goal every week to win
Right,
a game,
right. Mhm.
last play of the game. So,
Yeah.
but they don't have that one signature win, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. One win that I remember seeing, and I was kind of up close and personal for, was when they beat the Dolphins with Clarence Davis's catch in
See
the
your
end zone.
hands.
Sea of hands.
Yeah, I was right there in the stands, right there watching.
Yeah, I was in
And
that
he-
end zone right there in the corner. We had to
Yeah.
stand up. We couldn't see it because, you know, we were about 10 rows back and you couldn't see that corner.
Yeah,
That-
and it was just coming out from in front of everybody and just coming through with it. I mean,
Yeah.
best play I ever saw.
That's. I thought we were wrapping it up, but now we
So,
got something
anyway.
else going. But,
Yeah, I
but no, you guys were both at that game. That was the other thing about the Raiders is they were always sold out, but we could always find a way to get to games.
Well, you know what it was?
Yeah.
You guys remember Chuck Harper?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
We were joined at the hip all through the Porter school years and to start at Alameda High. Well, every year back then we could buy tickets at the Alameda Sporting Goods.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so him and I would sit down before the season started. We'd pick 2 games out, and we'd buy tickets for those games. And then come playoff time, we got to know the lady that ran literally the little ticket booth they had there, and she told us when they were going on sale. So we were the first ones there every time, So
Nice.
we got to go to so many games. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
funny
my-
about
my-
wrapping this up. Stuff
All right.
keeps coming up because it's good stuff. What do you got, Scott? I
Oh,
want
I
to
was
keep it
just going
going.
to say how I got to the games was my father's best friend was Chuck Kariaka. And
Oh, okay.
Chuck had season tickets for. And so when the kids didn't want to go, my dad and I would go join him and Stella and watch the
nice.
games. And yeah, so that was another big memory from back then in the 70s. But yeah, I mean, that's how you got tickets.
Right.
You got them from all different places. Everybody kind of knew something or somebody.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when I moved away from the Bay Area for my job and had to move up to Oregon, I was like, oh my God, I took for granted all this. Being able to go to 49er and Raider games on Sundays and Cal and Stanford on Saturdays and high school on Friday. It was like win, win, win.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, we were spoiled.
Yeah, we always.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
We were between that and then the A's
Yes.
and the Warriors in 75.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a shock the world moment, but yeah, we were
Exactly.
rottenly
Right there.
spoiled.
Yeah.
And then the best part is though, for most of us in Alameda, not only like you said earlier, Steve, we're watching these guys. We know them. We see them around town.
They were our
And
neighbors.
a lot of those guys were out working at the corner gas station pumping gas during the off season to make a living.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But as far as the tickets go, it seemed like we all knew enough people that had season tickets, but there was always a game they couldn't go to. So if you know 3 or 4 people, it's different weeks they can't go to the games. So all those weeks we get free tickets. It was awesome.
My mother had season tickets for years. And not once did that happen. I bought every game I went to, I had to buy my own ticket. She went to the 78 Super Bowl, couldn't get me a ticket.
No kidding.
Oh man, I was so mad at her.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we had to get tickets because they had that blackout rule back then.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
And if they weren't sold out 72 hours in advance, they
by
couldn't show the game.
Thursday at 1:00.
Yeah, they couldn't show the game.
It's like we were talking before, up until, 72, I think it was. A lot of times we would, like the Chiefs playoff game in 69, we couldn't watch it until 11:30 after the network news on Sunday night.
It would stay.
It wasn't on live.
Yeah.
Right.
Sports management thought that if they put it on TV, nobody was going to go to the game, which was absolutely ridiculous.
That got proven pretty quick.
It got proven pretty quick, but yeah, the game was live at 1:00. It would be on the radio, and God love Bill King. He was the best in the world.
Yeah.
And to listen
Nobody
to.
better.
So we just as soon listen to it on the radio. But then we
Oh.
would watch it at 11:30. We'd stay up late and watch the rebroadcast.
Even though we knew the outcome,
Yeah.
we still did it. You know?
Oh, you wanted to watch the game?
couldn't do
Yeah.
I had to actually sneak out. I had to sneak down to watch the game because everybody else would be asleep, and I go down there and just you know. And every now and then I get busted. Get to bed because I'd have the volume down really low, but the light I couldn't stop the light from shining.
Right.
Yeah. My mom was
Hey
great
Steve,
about
this
that,
was a
man.
blast. Thanks for asking me to come on. This is fun.
Well, I appreciate you being
Absolutely.
on. Good stuff. Over the past 50 years, the world's changed. The Raiders moved to LA. Then they moved back to Oakland. Now they moved to Las Vegas. But the Raider run in Oakland are memories that will last forever.